Welcome back. You're watching The Full View. Onto local news now. Sitting alone in a corner and self-mutilating unprovoked was how one political analyst described the recent troubles faced by the Democratic Alliance. South Africa's largest opposition party has been beset by problems, including a long drawn-out attempt to expel one of its most prominent members, Cape Town Mayor Patricia De Lille. There have been fights about senior positions in the party, its stand on race and land expropriation, its liberal past and future, as well as, of course, the shadow of former leader Helen, Zille, the Western Cape Premier. How much will these issues and others hurt the party that not too long ago was projecting as high a positive showing as 30% at the next election? Well, we are joined by the leader of the Democratic Alliance, Maimane, from Cape Town. Good evening to you and thank you for talking to us. I suppose my first question has to be, how badly do you miss Jacob Zuma?
Good evening and thank you so much for having us. Firstly, I don't think we miss Jacob Zuma at all. In fact, I'm grateful Jacob Zuma is gone. I think the only person who's going to miss Jacob Zuma is the ANC, because the ANC has to tell the people of South Africa why 10 million people can't find work, why our kids' education is so poor, why citizens don't feel safe, and why ultimately is our healthcare on the verge of collapse. Those are the questions. And before, it was easy to simply say, well, let's blame it all on the corruption of Jacob Zuma. Now I think we can really find out quite deliberately that it has nothing to do with the corruption of Jacob Zuma. It's got everything to do with ANC policies that have brought us to this point. So I think I'm very happy about this moment, and I'm looking forward to showing to the people of South Africa, here's an alternative, here's the plan that we have for South Africa, and here's the future we want to build.
I ask that question, of course, in all seriousness, because there has been this view that your party has been floundering in wake of recent positive sentiment towards new leadership of the ANC, and that with Zuma gone out of the picture, you've run out of ideas.
I think, first of all, it's a poor analysis of the state of our politics. When you look at where the DA is at, we run obviously in coalition governments, governments that affect 16 million South Africans. And where we are, even the Auditor General is demonstrating that we run the cleanest governments. We're the only party that is fighting for those who are left out. Whilst the ANC is increasing VAT, increasing fuel prices, making sure life is getting harder for people of South Africa, we're the party that's standing up fighting for them. In this Youth Month, I've been going to job centers, fighting for young people to be able to find work. So really, I think to reduce a political party to simply saying it stands in opposition to an individual is a misnomer. I think ultimately we must get back to talking about the issues that affect South Africans, and the issues that affect the people at home are the ones that I've just articulated, and we'll continue to fight for them and govern in such a way that it's those who are left out that are most looked after.
I mentioned in my introduction this long drawn-out process to be rid of the Cape Town mayor. If we look at the issues that the party has been dealing with in recent months, what lessons, if any, have you learned from how the De Lille saga has been handled? Would you do anything differently?
Look, I think as a party that is growing, I would have amended our constitution much earlier, because I think as a party that grew, we had to wait for Congress to make sure we've got an opportunity to be able to hold public reps to account. Any South African, it doesn't matter whether you run a business, it doesn't matter what you do. We as a party pride ourselves in being able to say we effect accountability. There are some serious allegations that were tabled against the mayor. There's a report against Bowman Gilfillan that's been tabled. There was an SMS that was sent out interfering with the administration of the system. It would be poor judgment of any political party to hide these matters under the carpet. We went up front and said we will deal with them, and therefore the matter is in court. We'll see how we go. That's the response. That's the kind of government people want, because we don't want a government where ultimately things get hidden underneath the carpet, people get promoted to different parts, and no accountability is effected. Till this day, Jacob Zuma can't tell, the ANC can't tell Jacob Zuma what he's done wrong, because the ANC is not serious about dealing with corruption. We're very serious about it, and it doesn't matter who you are in the DA, we hold you to account.
And let's talk about perception here, and I know you understand that half of the political game is dealing with perceptions that you need to cure, no matter what their sources are. There is this idea that some in the DA are more equal than others, that there have been kid gloves, for example, when it comes to dealing with the Western Cape Premier Helen Zille and the tweet matter, and a sledgehammer for the Mayor Patricia De Lille.
If there are allegations of corruption against the Premier of the Western Cape, the treatment would be the same. But to simply say that dealing with a matter of a tweet that I disagree with, I don't support the views at all, is precisely the same process that you must apply to dealing with allegations of maladministration, etc. Really, I think is creating a false moral equivalence. On the matter of Helen Zille, we dealt with the matter. She issued an apology to the people of South Africa, and ultimately it's our views that we don't support. That's why we don't serve in the same structure. But on these matters, we continually have to ask the simple question, do we want the best service for the people? And is the government of the Western Cape delivering unemployment levels that are lower than anywhere else in the country? Absolutely. Is the city of Cape Town, are we prioritizing the people of the city of Cape Town? We will continue to do that unashamedly so. So to try and create, tomorrow people are going to start by saying, but you treat that one like this and this one like this. These are totally different matters. Let us focus on the business of the people and ask ourselves the simple questions. Are we in fact running the cleanest governments and governments that deliver for the people? And I think the answer to that question is absolutely.
What do you want to clear up about recent reports that have suggested that you might have expressed some regrets at the role of Helen Zille in the party after your election as leader?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Helen Zille and I hold a professional relationship. I think it is a normal part of an organization that you need to redefine roles when the change of guard occurs. Helen Zille served in the same federal executive structures as I did, and I think retrospectively we would have taken a different view on that. But that matter has been settled. She now serves only as premier of the party and does not serve in any party decision-making structures. And so looking at the future, I think we would have to think about how we succeed leaders going forward. But I think at the end of the day, it's always a question of saying what matters and what doesn't matter. So even in the recent report, we've had to set those aside and say, are we continuing to do our job of delivering for people? And I think even looking at this particular matter, we've moved on and we're focused on the future of the country.
Now, you say that the issue, or at least there's no fair comparison between what you are dealing with when it comes to the mayor of Cape Town and the tweets around Helen Zille. There are those who would say that she's cast a long shadow over your party and that she remains a polarizing figure whose pronouncements continue to hurt, at least at a perception level, how the DA is accepted by many South Africans, how it's viewed by South African voters.
I've made no doubts about this issue. I don't support her views. I don't stand with those views. So there's no debate about that issue. Let's go back to then talking about equally so. As much as I think South Africans battle with the question of what these issues mean for them as individuals, and the other process that will take place for that, the other issue that also means a lot for people is the fact that people are poor, people are unemployed, people feel like life isn't getting better for them. So as much as we can talk about tweets on one end, surely we should also be talking about joblessness. Why are we not debating the fact that 1 in 4 children are dying every single day in this country thanks to malnutrition? So yes, I hear where South Africans are coming from, and I certainly don't stand with those views, but without doubt we should constantly come back to saying, as much as we talk about that, we must equally talk about what kind of government we want to put and whether we can create work for people and make sure kids aren't dying because of malnutrition.
Whilst of course we can drill down to some of the specifics that you are mentioning, there is also the idea of many who might still be searching for a political home and who are looking at the DA and trying to figure out exactly what it stands for. And that's why these issues do also need to be addressed. So for example, when you speak of an African liberalism, what do you mean?
I mean a liberal party that says we recognize the rights of individuals, but we recognize that those individuals share common properties with a community. So as I've always said, if you don't see that I'm black, you don't see me. But if all you see is that I'm black, you also don't see me, because I don't belong to a club of a photocopy of that all black people are the same. I form part of a community of black South Africans. I share Ubuntu, but I also stand as an individual. And I think the perspective of that issue, when you drill it down, is that ultimately we must uphold the rights of each citizen, not because they belong to a particular race, but because they are a citizen first and foremost. We must ensure that there's an independence of the media, that you can continue to do your job, that there's an independent judiciary, that democracy in fact creates the environments upon which citizens can share in the collective prosperity of that country. So I am chartering an agenda that says we want to see change, we want to see reforms, so that ultimately citizens can be empowered to prosper. It's a contrast between saying, let the state be at the forefront of development, or actually let's allow individuals, citizens, to be at the forefront of development. If you keep the state at it, you end up with state banks, the nationalizations of banks, the nationalizations of land. Whereas when you say, let citizens own land in their own right, let citizens prosper in their own rights, and let all of us as a people, black, white, Indian, and colored, work together for the common prosperity of all citizens. That is the agenda I'm chartering.
One of the hot button issues certainly at the moment is the whole issue of land expropriation, particularly without compensation. And it's beginning to appear that, at least from the politician's point of view, it means different things to different people. What potential does its messaging or misunderstanding have for creating further conflict and polarization in South Africa?
Yeah, it's a hot button. It's been brought up now just before the elections so that it has that potential of rallying support both for a view or not. Ours is to simply say, let's drill it down to what we're trying to achieve here as a country. We have a constitution we agreed to in 1995. That constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to be able to own property in their individual rights. Why do we want land to go back to the state? We should be empowering citizens to take the land and ensure that they can prosper. Well, that's why we stand as a political party to say the constitution is not the problem. We stand with Kgalema Motlanthe, who says it's the corruption in the ANC, it's the incompetence, and it's the fact that the ANC today spends more money on VIP security than it does on land reform. I support land reform. I think the constitution is not the problem. And ultimately, I want citizens to be able to prosper by owning land. That's why we roll out title deeds where we govern. That's why we ensure that in farming communities, the people who work the land actually end up owning the land. And ultimately, we want to ensure that there's land restitution where it's required. These are key policy pronouncements. And South Africans who want that for themselves, want a future like that, must be able to recognize that the DA is the only party now that's standing and fighting for that, whilst in fact other parties are believing that all land must belong to the state without compensation.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Of course, conversation with the leader of the Democratic Alliance, reflecting on the state of his party and its readiness ahead of the general election in 2019. The leader there, Maimane, in our Cape Town studios.